Hello, everybody. My name is Allison Conroy, and I am the Technical Liaison Director for the Canadian Association of Consulting Energy Advisors, or CACE, and this is CACE's Coffee Talks. Just a quick note before we get into today's episode that CACE's Coffee Talks discussions reflect personal perspectives and current industry understandings. These ideas are continuously evolving, and I do encourage you to share your thoughts and feedback after each episode. Please note that the views expressed during these conversations do not necessarily represent those of CACE, any company that the individual or my guest works for, or any other industry partners that we have. So with that, we'll get into today's episode.
Okay, record to this computer. Perfect. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our first Coffee Talk, CACE Coffee Talk. My name is Allison Conroy. I am CACE's Technical Liaison Director. It is my job to bridge the gap where it might exist between all of our industry partners across the country and our EA members. Make sure everyone's on the same page. Information sharing is important in all aspects. I am based in BC, but CACE is a national organization, so I'm here to help you out across the country. And for my first coffee talk today, Kent Pearson has been so kind to join me. Kent brings a lot of EA experience to the field. Kent, you'll have to refresh my memory how long you've been working as an EA, and I know you have been diligent about branching into other areas of building science and building envelope modeling, testing world as well. So it'll be great to talk about that if we can. But yeah, Kent's joining me today, so we should be chatting, for 20 or 30 minutes. Kent and I have worked together in the past, so we have a great relationship and are able to talk for length at many things. So we'll probably have to cut ourselves off after a little bit. But yeah, we hope you enjoy this chat. We'll get into some interesting topics and kind of reflect on some events that we've been at both together in the past couple of months. But again, before I get ahead of myself, I'll let Kent introduce himself and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Allison. So yeah, those who don't know me, I'm Kent Pearson. I'm a sole proprietor, energy advisor out of Alberta. I am one of your CACE board members. I'm also the chair of your CACE Education Committee. Been an EA for 9 years now. Got into that when building codes changed, and all of a sudden we had to build these super expensive, energy efficient homes. And when I was a contractor at the time, I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. And I had a very good friend of mine, who introduced me to someone that many of us otherwise know as Tyler Hermanson, and that's how I became an EA. Tyler said, absolutely, there's a better way. Let me show you the way. And I became an energy advisor. And I haven't looked back since. It's been an exciting role. And then even becoming a board member and being really involved in the industry of elevating what our industry, what we do as energy advisors. Yeah, it's been spectacular. I love it.
Awesome. And I didn't catch it, you just said this, you're north of Calgary, correct?
I am southeast of Calgary.
Southeast of Calgary.
Southeast. I'm in Medicine Hat, where we like to consider ourselves the forgotten corner of Alberta because it's really only Medicine Hat in this corner. And we like to feel sorry for ourselves, so why not, right?
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, like I think every town no matter where you go in the country, you're gonna have that little forgotten corner that you feel that you're somewhat neglected.
Yeah.
And because the major centers, you're in Prince George.
I am, yeah.
In the forgotten north of BC because everything happens in the lower mainland.
That's right. Yes. And I do like to laugh because everyone says, northern BC. And then when you look on the map, you're like, oh, you're actually only like geographically halfway up the map. Like there's a lot more, same as Alberta, right? There's a lot more up the province north of us, but most of the population's, down south. So yes, you have to pass through here if you're going north, but that's all most people do, pass through and just keep going.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
feels like what we have here. Just people just drive by, get gas, and then their next stop is Swift Current or Regina.
there you
And they
go.
probably feel the same as what Medicine Hat is. It's just like they just get gas and keep going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
So yeah, thanks for
Okay,
having
well,
me.
yeah, no problem. Thank you again for being here. So, yeah, I thought it'd be great to have you on because we were both just at the Building Knowledge Canada's spring, what do they call it? Building science or spring training
Spring camp.
camp?
Spring
Spring
training
camp.
camp. Yeah.
So this was actually, I think I may have heard of it only in the recent past, but they have been hosting it for a number of years. I guess it was hosted when the company originally founded back in the 90s or 2000s, and then it was put on hiatus for a
Sure.
bit.
Yeah.
You endured some online camps during COVID, and now is back in person, and is typically held outside of the GTA area in Ontario. But man, like pretty cool to come from BC and see energy advisors, builders, people in the industry come from all across the country. It is a popular event. I think they were sold out again, and yeah, just this opportunity for building science brains to get together and talk about all the stuff that's going on in the field, which was pretty cool.
Well, and I had this was my second year with the Building Knowledge Spring Camp. And when I decided to attend something that was like bigger than some of the local stuff that happens in Calgary, um, I was like, I'm like, what is there out there? And of course, there's camps in Colorado, there's stuff in Vegas, like there's building
Mm-hmm.
science camps everywhere. Um, and I forget who I was talking to. It quite could have, it might have even been Cindy or another board member that it came up and it was just like, you need to go to spring camp. Like if you've
Mm,
never been to spring camp, you got to go to spring camp. And I went last year and exactly what you said. It was a room of, I'm going to say 200 people that when you sat down at the table, when whoever was sitting beside you, you could just turn to them and we could geek out about energy and
and they
anything.
would listen. They would
And
listen.
they
They
would
wouldn't just gloss
listen.
over. Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't like, so what do you do?
Yeah.
Oh, that you're an energy advisor. What does
Yeah.
that do?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's been something that I've learned is like I say, what's an energy advisor? And I was like, well, I'm an energy consultant. And they're like, oh, you work in the oil field. And I'm like, no, no. And then as soon as you say no, they think I'm against all of that. And I'm just like,
Oh
well,
boy.
no, but we can do better.
I feel like
Well,
that's a
I'm not
very
going to say I'm against
Alberta
it, but I can say
specific.
we could do better.
I feel like that's a very Alberta specific path that you go down.
Most likely, most
Yeah.
likely. So, but I think, yeah, I think it's very, I think those types of camps or those types of get-togethers are spectacular. Um, I was in Alberta, and I know there's a Buildex in Vancouver. I think there's Buildex Toronto as well. I did go to the Buildex in Calgary this last fall. So now that I've started to go, I was like, hey, this
Mm.
is really neat.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just trade shows,
Mm-hmm.
is kind of what my brain was saying.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as I attended, I was like, man, there is some really great collaboration between
Mm-hmm.
just the industry itself, the architects, the engineers, the EAs, the consultants, the um, designers and builders and trainers. Like I, I was taken aback by the amount of collaboration that is really out there.
Yeah.
Um, just by like, lifting my head from my day job of running the company to say, what else is out there? It's got to be more than just sitting at my desk plugging through paperwork. And yeah,
Yeah.
pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a good point because when I was working as an EA, it was the same thing as especially if you're not with a company that employs more than one EA and it's just yourself as a sole proprietor, you kind of just, put your head down and get focused on your work, but you don't have the opportunity to talk to all those different industry partners or even other EAs a lot of days. And it takes, especially if you start out and it's just yourself and then that as far as you ever expand. And if that was the case for me, it takes a long time to build up those relationships with other energy advisors and to make those connections. And the best way that I found doing that, and then just to expand my own perspective of everything that was happening in the past and then stuff coming down the pipe in the future, was to go to these events. And obviously easier when I was living in Vancouver at the time. There was more events in the lower mainland, but yeah, Buildex was a good one. Um, what else was there? CHBA, BC would often host good training events, and just not only for business networking and opportunities, but just that geek out opportunity where you're like, cool, people that are interested in the same thing as me, and they're not just politely asking what you do and just kind of smiling and nodding and then trying to steer the conversation elsewhere because they have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So yeah, it gives you warm fuzzy feelings as an energy advisor or someone in the building science profession to know that there are others out there and you get to chat with them, which is fun. So yeah, but that was the furthest I'd ever traveled for a camp or an event. So that was awesome. And just really interesting. I found that with my role in CACEA so far is I've always been so BC specific that to see the challenges and opportunities that are happening elsewhere in the country, not only in building science discussion, but for energy advisors, which I've found really interesting.
And yeah, I think that ties in very nicely to when we go to these conferences or these training camps or all these different things that are available. And of course, there's probably hundreds every year. I think at one time as the board, we were trying to get Cindy to find every one of them in the country, and she was like, I don't have that kind of time. Um, and but I think it's spectacular because as you said, like you get to really find out what's happening in the industry. And
Mm-hmm.
like I talked about new products, and like one of the things that came through at spring camp is we started
Mm-hmm.
talking about this like the embodied carbon. We know embodied carbon is coming
Yeah.
into the building code. There's they haven't given us official dates. I don't think I've seen in the NBC, but as early as 2025, which gets released in 6 months ish, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're supposed to talk about that. So, yeah, it was interesting to hear forward thinking builders, which I don't see enough of in my area,
Mm-hmm.
to say like, hey, like we need to something low carbon. What about this product? And
Mm-hmm.
one of the products that came up was fiberglass forms
Yes.
for foundations, right? So
Yeah.
we look at concrete typically. When I was started thinking embodied carbon, okay, I got to get rid of concrete. In my climate zone, we're really lucky so that a wood foundation in Alberta is very durable. If
Really? And
if
still
done
a thing?
correctly, it's a huge thing. I'm
Like still
seeing
in new
more
construction?
in new construction. I'm
Oh,
seeing more and
interesting.
more wood foundations
Yeah.
being put in
Yeah.
because they're more cost effective, especially
Yes.
rurally. To get a concrete truck out rurally is expensive,
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
um, they went from traditional concrete, 8-inch concrete with a frost wall
Mm-hmm.
into an ICF foundation because
Mm-hmm.
then at
Mm-hmm.
least you know the contractor could put this up himself and
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have to come back again,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was one day you drop the truckload, you build your blocks, and
Mm-hmm.
life was great. But you still had to get a concrete truck out,
Mm-hmm.
right? And of course, I don't know if anybody's really done the math of what the ICF people say their foundations have as an effective R value, comparative to what their actual thermal effective values are.
Oh, it seems to be a little exaggerated, I find.
There's a marginal gap,
Yeah.
like double marginal gap. If you say two is a marginal gap, two times is a marginal gap.
Yeah.
But there's a gap there, and once people started seeing, I'm like, well, that they're not getting the same performance out of it. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say ICF is bad because ICF is a spectacular
Yeah.
product still.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, they were like in this rural area. They're like, hey, I can get a lift of 2x delivered and used
Hmm.
R28, and I actually have a higher effective R value than an ICF wall for less money.
And so what do they, I know we're getting off topic from the fiberglass forms or
That's
walls
okay.
already, but now I'm curious about this. So they're, I don't think they're coming back into style in Prince George yet, but there are historically quite a few homes that were built with wood foundations. So in the new construction, what do you typically see that they're using for insulation? Like how are they finishing, like insulating and finishing those walls?
It's good damp proofing, of course,
Yeah.
which if anybody's got to listen, I saw your note, like John Straub, he came up in
Mm-hmm.
another course I was teaching as well. If you get a chance to listen to anything that John Straub is doing, like very entertaining, very knowledgeable man. But yeah, so we have that down proofing on it, and then the interior
Mm-hmm.
is just we're using R28 bat
Mm-hmm.
and gypsum on the inside, poly and gypsum.
Really? And
That's
then is
it.
it pressure treated wood?
Oh yeah, everything's pressure
Yeah.
treated.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Below
and then
grade.
the outboard is it depends on where you are. The outboard is either going to be 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch pressure treated with
Mm-hmm.
protection boards and
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of engineering lingo that goes
Mm-hmm.
on top of it to protect it. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
lots of gravel.
Mm-hmm.
Gravel's not that big of a problem where I am, and where we don't have gravel, we have super sandy soil, so
Right.
drainage
Good
is not an
drainage.
issue. Yeah,
I
I
yeah. Oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
I was gonna say, I know as you go east through Saskatchewan and Manitoba, you get into some clay
Yeah.
issues. Um, and maybe this is where that fiberglass is gonna come in handy,
Yeah.
right? And I like say, like that's where going to these things is very interesting. So now we have a fiberglass form foundation wall,
Mm-hmm.
which and from what I remember, and those 2 days are a bit of a blur. It is
Yeah.
drinking from a fire hose with very little sleep when you're coming from the
Mm-hmm.
western side of the country. It was like it's a sandwich, ICF sandwich form, right? With
Yeah.
insulation
Yeah.
between it.
Yeah.
Um, like, how is that neat for just tilt up construction,
Yeah.
even?
And so, and then I don't like I brought up the website, of course, they're not going to disclose all the information. It does speak to when we're thinking of embodied carbon. They didn't have the numbers and I wasn't able to dig anything up before our discussion, but I would be curious to see, like, I know nothing about fiberglass production, right? Like
Mm,
concrete, we know it's uses a lot of water, very energy intensive. Bring all the materials together for concrete production. But yeah, I know nothing about fiberglass production. So how does it compare in embodied carbon? That would be interesting to see.
mm,
Um, but but yeah, like fascinating to think about these different materials that people have thought, we're using this for so many other things that, provide structural durability. And why not look at putting it below grade as well and using it in houses? And then, the other factor that would come into question would be cost. Um, you know,
of course. Yep.
yeah, how does it compare? And this is a pretty beautiful custom home that we were looking at that used the fiberglass, but yeah, just I love seeing that where all of a sudden you go, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like here's a component of a house that has one of the higher embodied, is part of the higher embodied carbon aspects of a new home. How can that be changed?
Yeah.
Which is just, yeah, sometimes it's just those simple things in front of you that you forget to look at or forget to think about. But yeah, but it'll be interesting to see where the codes go. Right now we're looking at operational carbon is the big thing in British Columbia
Mm,
that's being accounted for. Um, and it's I think I know Chris Magwood also gave a talk, and he's really big on the discussion of carbon in general. I think there's a lot of details that have to be hashed out and a clear understanding, obviously, not only of operational carbon, which I feel like we've got a pretty good handle on, but in embodied carbon, the thing is, what are we accounting for, right? Like, where does in terms of the life cycle assessment of a product or
right.
material, where are we starting accounting for that carbon and then where does it finish? And I think as part of Chris's discussion, the general rules right now that have been established, at least in the States, and maybe that they're looking at here. I think it's from material extraction. Correct me if you remember differently, but material extraction to installation, essentially. Like we're not including demolition and disposal.
Yeah, and I remember very similarly that it was
Yeah.
like
Okay.
it started almost that, let's call it the birth of the material when it comes out of
Mm-hmm.
ground, or those pieces of that
Mm-hmm.
material come out of the ground, to installation. And I think we might see that change as the future evolves on it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would suspect that one of the reasons why they're doing that is the assumption is being made that once it's installed in the house, it's there for 80 years,
Yeah.
right? And I that was one of the things when I first was becoming a carpenter. That was one of the things that my teacher, my mentor at the time, was teaching me, is that everything we put together is supposed to needs to last 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
So by taking an extra 30 seconds to make sure it's done beautiful and well and good is
Mm-hmm.
worth it. Because
Mm-hmm.
if it doesn't last 100 years, then we haven't done a service
Right.
to the homeowner. And he sold it to me as a homeowner. I was in business. I was like, hey, final product lasts forever. And now I think about that as well. It's like, well, that's a very big conversation itself. Like, if we can build these, and it moves into what we're going to talk about otherwise, it's like if we can have our products last for 80 to 100 years versus 40 years, that's going to make a difference in
Mm-hmm.
the overall cost. If you think about the cost per year of that, what that home is,
Yeah.
isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that does
Take
make a big difference.
right, take a home. We say we don't build things to last. I think refrigerators, the lifespan on a typical refrigerator now is 5 years.
Oh
We're
yeah, it costs you more to fix it than it does to just replace it.
yeah, and they're just, that's the thing. They're just not built to last like they used to be, right? And that's why we have freezers that are built in the 60s that still run, but you
Mm-hmm.
have one 5 years old and it won't. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I think that's that beautiful part of it, to say if we can build it and it lasts longer, then we are just doing we're doing a better job
Yeah.
at protecting our environment, at protecting that carbon cycle.
Yeah.
Bring it to carbon again,
Yeah.
and say, well, if I only have to build one of these in 100
Yeah.
years versus two or three of these to get 100
Yeah.
years, wow, isn't that a carbon difference
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
just materials
Yeah.
to it?
And
So I
there's
think I
been
think that's why they've got it cut off. Is we can't. We're assuming these things are going to last 80 years, but we don't
yeah, I
know.
think that needs to be reevaluated. You're right. And I, it's ringing a bell that there's some interesting projects I think that I've heard of in passing or seen presentations on where the assessment's been done of, okay, we have this older home, we really need to make some changes. Say it's a couple that bought it, but they want to, live in it for a long time, or it's somebody that's, aging in place. Um, and I'm pretty sure there's research out there that has shown it's actually, you will have a, lower carbon footprint in all of the materials that you will use if you renovate that house, even if you took it down to the studs versus tearing it down and building a brand new house. It's just, at the end of the day, yeah, if we can work with what we've got, and like you said, hopefully save as much as you can and just kind of make the tweaks where needed. But and that's another big conversation that's happening, is that we're getting into, as through CACEA, but I think energy advisors across the country, more people, because of affordability of housing and new homes, looking at how can I stay in the house that I'm in and what are the changes that I can make. So,
Yeah.
One of the, I'd say, positive repercussions of that is that maybe that is overall lowering the carbon footprint of the housing industry if you have more people, staying in the homes they're in and just making the changes versus, moving out, building something new.
Yeah. And it, I don't know how it would be in BC, but I do know in Alberta because affordability is such a thing. Like an affordable new house, by the time you buy that little chunk of strip of land and you put
Hmm.
your house on it, you're $700,000.
Yeah.
It like, and that's I'm going to say entry level new home.
Yeah.
And it's just so much money that you can't get into that market. And when I talk to my builders, they are saying like, yeah, our new construction has drastically slowed in the last few years,
Hmm.
um, and then it's slowing again. We're not going to get into the conversation of the possible drivers behind those things, but it's slowing down again. Um, but their renovation side of their business, they do both. He's he's booked through till next spring.
Wow.
Like they can't keep up with
Yeah.
the renovation market because people are staying in their homes. And um, now that we're spending so much more time in our homes,
Hmm.
more people are still working from home
Hmm. Hmm.
since COVID. People aren't traveling near as much as they used to be for their own reasons.
Yeah.
Um, so they're putting that money into their homes to make
Yeah.
their home the oasis, their
Yeah.
oasis, so they don't have to do those things. And I like that. I like that idea of saving what we can of our buildings. And yeah, we might have to refurbish it and take a little bit, knock a wall out here or there, but we can really make our entire home last longer.
Yeah. Work with what you thought.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, and this kind of ties in with what we're talking about here. But one of the other things that came up at spring camp was really this resiliency discussion, and I think it ties in with thinking about materials because sometimes you realize if you're not encompassing all of these ideas or kind of future planning, there are things that can work against each other, and sometimes you kind of have to do trade-offs. But sometimes things complement each other as well. And where I'm going with this, or where my head is at, is if we think about embodied carbon and we think about the materials we're using, in BC and Alberta, fire smart planning. We're planning against resiliency for wildfires and how they're affecting communities more and more in the past couple of years, is a bigger discussion. Okay, well, if I'm doing a renovation or even if I'm building a new home, let's think about what materials work best for that. Okay, well, maybe Roxel, low flammability, provides a little bit more protection, durability to the house. But then you think about it from the flip side, and it's like, oh shoot! But then when I think about that from the carbon footprint, the body carbon of that material, ooh, it's on the higher side. And it's so this is interesting. All these discussions that are happening to me because if they're siloed, then they're great. But then when you put them together, you realize you really need to think through all these steps and figure out what's going to work best for you for your own home situation. But it's interesting how all these ideas are kind of weaving in and out of each other.
Well, and uh, it brought me back to something that Gord Cook said at spring camp, and it was the unintended consequences of now low solar gain glass
Mm-hmm.
on our windows, and we don't know what that is. We learned very quickly what happened when the building code came in. We went to high solar gain glass.
Mm-hmm.
We cooked out our occupants.
Yep.
We learned that in the first 6 months.
Yeah.
So we were able to adjust and pivot very quickly. In this case, we've now gone to low solar gain.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to be the trade-off of that? And I think that's what you're talking about is um, we're going to make these changes, right? So we choose a product, and we choose a product because of, right, the fire durability of
Mm-hmm.
Rockwool,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't think about the embodied carbon of that
Mm-hmm.
Rockwool. Is there another product out there that maybe could do something different, or maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
in comes out of a different factory that maybe has a better carbon number, or like I I think that's that silo. Like we can have the conversations of, you know, embodied carbon and concrete, and just be
Mm-hmm.
like, this is what it's going to do, and this is what it is. But when we don't open that conversation to say, okay, well, we can't give concrete a bad name because you can still use concrete there's new technologies and additives that
Yeah.
will drop that carbon number.
Yeah.
And um, you know, with keeping things siloed, it doesn't allow for that intuitive mind to say what's going to work best for me,
Mhm.
right? On this project. And um, um, yeah, you talked about the fire resilience
Mhm.
part of it. And in Alberta, we deal with hail resilience,
Right.
especially in our little corner here. We have lots of hail, lots of wind, um, and stucco has been the choice for so many people. Of course,
Yeah.
stucco is a spectacular and great product.
Yeah.
What we're learning though is that when it's 45 degrees Celsius in southern Alberta, and you
Mhm.
have a dark gray stucco for a number of days in a row where the overnight temperature doesn't get below 20 degrees,
Yeah.
which is becoming more and more common, we have a significant amount of interstitial condensation occurring in our
Uh,
walls
yeah.
because our walls can't breathe
Mhm.
enough out, and our interior cooling is running
Mhm.
so much that
Mhm.
our warm surface is the outside.
Mhm.
I did a project. They had water pouring out of it. We went in there and I hit the wall, and the outside temperature of the OSB was 86 degrees. That's
Well,
hot.
yeah, that's hot.
That's hot. Like it
Your
was,
house
it
is
was
a sauna.
your house is a sauna. It was uncomfortable to touch it. Like
Wow.
there was that much west sun hitting, and
Yeah.
like that. So unintended consequence,
Yeah.
right? We're now we get to learn these different pieces of saying, oh, now maybe I don't like acrylic stucco
Mhm.
anymore, or at least I don't want acrylic stucco that's going to be dark,
Mhm. Well,
right?
and yeah, it's fascinating. I think that's one of the fun, and maybe not in a good way, but from the building science perspective, the fun things of our country being so big, and an event like spring camp, or just having discussion with EAs or builders or building scientists across the country, is you realize that you get into, even within a province, like these little microclimates and pockets of you know problems that have come up, or building science yeah, problems that have arisen, that oh, never thought of that, like, oh, we've never experienced that, or like the leaky condo syndrome or problem in Vancouver. And what you're speaking of with the stucco reminds me of, um I've had these conversations with John Straub in the past, and he's brought up, he's like, oh no, well, in Ontario, it's really important. You got to be thinking about the impact of inward vapor drive on hot days on brick walls. And in my mind, I'm like, brick walls? I'm like, who builds with brick? And I'm like, oh, right, Ontario. There's a lot of brick, and out east, right? And it's just totally different building materials, same building science principles, but just totally different application or occurrences, that we're not used to, in other provinces or other areas. And same thing with the stucco, like, oh yeah, I don't see a lot of stucco, those hot temperatures, like you're saying. Didn't think about that, but also why it's important that we're having these discussions at these events. So then you realize, maybe you're hopefully trying to avoid these unintended consequences when they might come up when you're working on a project in the future.
Yeah, and to I'm gonna give us, if anybody's held on this long anyway, I'm gonna give us a shameless plug. Um, to say like this, that's the intent of what these conversations are about, that you
Yeah,
get to have with numerous people across the country in
yeah,
numerous fields, and is let's start sharing some of this information. Let's share
absolutely.
that story. Let And I just think about stucco. I was on my walk this morning, and we have a part three building that has exterior EPS with stucco over top of it.
Hmm.
And the birds have loved nesting in that. The woodpeckers just goes right through it. They hear it's hollow and they
Oh,
go right in there.
oh,
Let's talk. We could just start talking about resiliency, like great resilient product,
yeah,
except
yeah, yeah. We
against
don't even need to talk
woodpeckers.
about climate resiliency. We're just talking about, like, yeah, infestation or bird resiliency here.
Bird termites, like
Yeah,
termite
yeah,
could be. We
yeah,
started earlier talking about wood foundations.
for sure.
Um, Termite infestation is moving up into Canada in higher levels. So now do we start looking at termite protections?
Hmm.
It-
Yeah. So many different, discussions and things that we have to think about, have had to think about, and have to think about. But as you said, we don't want to keep anybody too long, and I know we could go on for days.
Good.
There's so many things we haven't touched on that I had notes on, that I'd love to pick your brain on, or that we could keep talking about. But cognizant of our time, and it's Friday afternoon, so I will stop us there and say thank you so much for the conversation. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. It's always great talking to you. It's great talking with people that you can geek out with.
Yeah,
It's a lot of fun.
exactly. Okay. Well, I will stop recording here, and thank you everybody for joining us, and hopefully you'll tune in for our next coffee talk in the near future.